What is up, Steeler fans? Welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Hangover. This one's coming off of a win. The Steelers win 18-10 against the Atlanta Falcons. Shannon, my man, how you doing? How'd you enjoy the game? I think you're frozen now.
I actually enjoyed it a lot. I mean, they didn't score any touchdowns, but I was impressed with, a lot of the young guys, and I was excited about, the new offense under Arthur Smith and the way they playing clean on the offensive side of the ball for the most part. They didn't turn the ball over. So, all in all, I thought it was a step forward from what we'd seen for the last couple of years. So I was excited.
I was excited too. I was waiting. Yeah, obviously everybody was waiting pins and needles for this game, to finally get a glimpse of what this team is going to be like this year without Matt Canada, without the predictive play calls. And well, we'll get into this game a little bit more, but first let's cover off some of the house cleaning stuff. We had a couple of transactions happen earlier today. Carlos Waitman finds himself back on the roster. He's a former punter of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Then he went to Denver, and he is filling in for Cameron Johnston, who is out for the year with a knee injury. I mean, so many hopes, so many thoughts at this guy. We finally had a punter goes down in the first game. How big is this loss?
I think in this type of offense that they're going to play this year, it's bigger than it would be. I think that, field position is going to be so important, and he was such a talented player, even a good tackler. I was really excited about having him, and it's just so disappointing. And as Tomlin said, I hate it for him. I mean, because, he's been, everybody's been praying for a good punter forever. And then we finally get one, and he gets hurt. Can't even get through the first game. But hopefully he'll be able to rehab and come back. And Carlos Waitman, I really liked him when he filled in for Harvin there. I think it was Harvin's father passed away, and he kicked for 2-3 games. And I wanted him to keep him. And they brought back Harvin, of course. And so I think, I was thinking somebody like him or Brad Wing. Both guys have experience with the Steelers. They have experience holding as a placeholder for Boswell. And we know how important that is in this offense. So I'm very excited to have Waitman. I hate how the circumstances for him to come back to Pittsburgh, but I think all things said and done, he was the best option.
I do too. My biggest worry was that Big Press was going to find himself on the team. And some more shanks were going to happen.
Yeah.
Seeing Boz punt a 43-yarder, I think that's what it was, 43. It looked
43.
Further.
It was. Yeah.
Looked further than for me, but 43-yard punt. I mean, he outdid Presley Harvin towards the end of last season as well.
Yeah.
And so,
there's guys that are clutch.
Yeah.
And then the opposite of clutch was Harvin.
Yeah.
Harvin could boom it if it didn't matter. But if it was a pressure situation and you needed to flip the field, he's shaking it every time.
Exactly. It was very frustrating. To be honest with you, when Cameron Johnston went down and Atlanta obviously chose to have the Steelers re-kick, I thought that was going to be disastrous.
I did too. Yeah.
I was like, this is going to be bad. Somebody's going to, even though it's Chris Boswell, I don't know him as a punter. And so I was extremely worried there at the end of that game.
Hey, two things that were overlooked there. As you say, Boswell was clutch. I mean, he did a great job, and that was a decent punt. I mean, for a guy who hadn't punted since high school, I think that's what he said. And then Scotty Miller held on that field goal to go up 8.
Yeah.
And Scotty Miller had practiced only Friday. They needed, in case something was to happen, they look at every scenario, and they said, hey, you want to try to hold for a place kick? And he's like, sure, I'll do it. Trying to be versatile, do anything they could ask you to do. Yeah. And he'd only held in practice on Friday, and then he had to do it Sunday at a big moment. So Scotty Miller coming through too.
Oh, yeah, that's one way to find yourself on the roster, doing things like that, having the special ability, if need be, to fill in is huge. And like we said, it's bad for Johnston. Good to see Corliss Waiton back. Like I said, there's some other options out there. I'm glad he's the one that ended up finding his way back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And speaking of players finding their way back, the Steelers go
Yes.
ahead and sign Terrell Edmunds
Yeah.
off the practice squad for the Jacksonville Jaguars. So he finds his way back to the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this is probably the most depth safeties that we've seen in a while. I mean,
Oh
the
yeah.
secondary was a question coming into this season, and after game one, and now especially after the signing of Terrell Edmunds as your fourth safety, who's I think is probably going to be utilized more in special teams as well.
Yep. Yep.
I it's an A+ for me. What are your thoughts on Terrell Edmunds' return?
Thrilled. Everybody knows what a huge fan I am of that young man. How much I value his selflessness. He's a total team player. You never heard nothing about him other than he was just a selfless team player. Uh, he was just not a playmaker, but he was so reliable and such a great security blanket. And he let Fitzpatrick do Fitzpatrick things. And we've seen how Elliott, he fits right in. He played excellent Sunday. But now, when have the Steelers ever had two strong safeties now if Elliott goes down for a little bit, I feel much better knowing that Edmunds is there and we're not going to have to throw Fitzpatrick over and have him be a box linebacker again. He can stay where he needs to be. And Edmunds is the perfect backup. And as you say, he's a really good special teams guy too. So I know the way it happened, I'm sure there was some bridges burned, but you're looking at a situation that we're going to sign you off the practice squad. Now you got to go on the active roster, I think, for at least 4 or 6 games, which I think he'll be on the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm.
But he'll make more in one game than he would on one game check than he would of the whole season on the practice squad. So it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer for Edmunds and for the Steelers. So I am thrilled.
I am too, especially when it comes to the gunner position. I think the Steelers need somebody else out there with speed and tackling ability and that can get away. And what's one of the things that Terrell Edmunds had was he had some freakish ability, speed. He couldn't really, place a ball in the air that well, but he could run like crazy.
Yeah.
And so, I think he's going to be utilized because I think, that was one of the weaknesses. I know we saw Scotty Miller at the end there, get that tackle on the Boz.
Oh, that was nice. That was nice.
That was clutch. I mean, that was the one time that I think we saw the
Boz kicked it 43, and then he made sure there wasn't no return yards.
Exactly. And so, seeing those things, I think the Steelers need another guy that could be a gunner, a bigger guy, a bigger body. I mean, they were using, Boykins in the past, and he wasn't necessarily a speed demon. He was just a bigger body that can get down there and tackle. And I think Terrell Edmunds brings that next ability and speed. And I'm excited to have him there as the fourth string outside. Safety, and then a guy that they can put in the box if need be. If you have a team that's willing to spread some people out and or have multiple tight ends out there, that was one of the things that Terrell Edmunds kind of excelled in, so to speak, was the covering of the tight ends. And we just saw Baltimore out there with Andrews and Likely. I mean, those are 2 threats there that you're going to need to put down. So I'm assuming that this is going to be a huge role for him, and I'm excited for Terrell Edmunds coming back. Now we'll talk quickly about the game, and then we'll do a quick break after that. But what was your knee-jerk reaction about the game? What did you feel when you first saw it? I know a lot of people were a little bit, upset about the offensive game plan / production. What were your thoughts? Just knee-jerk, and then we'll get into the breakdown of the game after the break.
Well, I think my offensive expectations. First, I've got to say that the Canada's gone and Arthur Smith were implementing his offense. But if you looked at the route trees and the targeted areas, there was nothing in the middle of the field. And I was screaming, what is happening? I mean, this isn't Canada. Why are we? I mean, I understand this ball security that Tomlin just pounds it. It pounds it. Ball security. And it is more risky to throw over the middle. But you have to utilize the whole field. You have to spread the field. and you have to have crossers, and you have to. We didn't even. It was everything outside the numbers or checkdowns. And I thought that would be more of a problem with Wilson because that's what he did with Denver a lot. But this was Fields in there, and it was still nobody thrown across the middle. That has to change. That being said, the offensive line had two basically rookies in that Frazier made his first career start in his first professional game. Spencer Anderson did not play or start last year, other than like the extra tight end and heavy pace. He was in there making his first start. Broderick Jones still dealing with injury. And honestly, Frazier was the best lineman. He's the most consistent. I heard a guy say today that Frazier, if you watch the film, it looked just like he did at West Virginia. Now that's saying something from an All-American that comes in and his first game as a rookie, he's just fundamentally superior to any center they've had since Pouncey. And I was so impressed with his game. He helped Anderson, who had your normal struggles, being a backup forced in to make your first start. But Daniels, who had not given up a 1 sack in 2 years, could have been credited with 2 sacks, honestly. But he definitely gave up his first sack. And Daniels struggled more than I'd seen him struggle at any point last year. I don't know if that guardian cap is helping him or not. I don't know if if there's something going on there where maybe he knows this is his last year in Pittsburgh. But he's got to play good or he's going to get replaced by McCormick. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping he gets his act together because a lot of when they tried to run outside zone, he was missing his blocks and his guy was getting all the penetration and blowing the play up.
Yeah.
You can't have that because you got to count on Daniels. He's your vet. Especially with Samalu wasn't in there, Daniels is your vet. But I thought that, again, they stressed the Fields to play clean, and he did. And that led to him. Pickens made some excellent plays. You see that talent and that enthusiasm that he knows he's the number one option. And I thought that, I don't want to get into it yet. We will later, but these blown calls by them refs, that drove me bonkers. There was at least 4 blatant, terrible, terrible calls, and they all went against the Steelers. But I digress on that for now. But on the defensive side, they were what we thought they were. Mm-hmm. But we know how good the front seven is, and they showed up. But, Daniel, I'm telling you, I got to say this. I am so proud of that coverage. Those corners and that secondary and the linebackers, they were excellent in coverage. There was times Cousins didn't really have an open target. He had to kind of force it. And, of course, he threw 2 picks, could have threw 3. And so I've been begging for a more faster athletic secondary. They finally got it, and we've seen the results because that coverage was excellent Sunday.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. The defense did outstanding. Offense, my knee-jerk reaction was 3rd and 6, and they hand the ball off to Cordell Patterson. Mm-hmm. My response was, what in the Matt Canada is this play? That's exactly what I said out loud. And I was like, Jesus, I thought we got away from this nonsense. And so I was a little bit concerned. And I'll be honest, that series of plays that happened early on, the missed throw from Justin Fields kind of, put me in a concerned mood throughout the entire game. And it may have, especially early on or after the first watch, magnified the negativity versus how well they actually did play. And it wasn't until my second round of watching the game when I realized that, they played quite a bit well. You brought up the middle of the field not being targeted. One thing I noticed was that it seemed like Arthur Smith was cutting the field in half. And, Justin Fields was looking at one side or another outside of the one where he went to the left and then chunk it to the right. Outside of that play, it was like they cut the field in half. So I kind of understand that to a certain extent. But yeah, no, I was one of these people that were a little bit concerned after the game just because the Steelers didn't score any offensive touchdowns or any touchdowns, period. The closest they got was an interception return that almost went the distance.
Yeah, I was hoping. I was like, go, 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 go.
Yeah, I was too, because I was like, man, if he don't get in, I'm not entirely sure the offense is going to get in either. And so, that was my knee-jerk reaction. I went back and I watched it, and then I think there was a lot of good, even from the quarterback position. And I think I understood a little bit more why, for instance, they went with that 3rd and 6 and they handed it off to Cordell Patterson. I think it had more to do with just to try to settle down Justin Fields. I think he was a little bit nervous. He was in front of his hometown, a lot of friends and family there. And, he's put into this position, probably didn't think he was going to be in this position starting the week. And then, even though he took majority of the reps throughout the week with the ones, what game plan were they setting up for? Were they planning on having Russ? And when did that game plan change? And, I think that we'll know more about who he is if he plays this week against Denver. I'm not necessarily saying that's going to be the case, but I think that was more to settle him down. And I saw that as the game progressed, I thought that they did a lot better. But we'll get into all of that and much more in more detail. We'll start off probably more with the offensive line and their performance right after the breaks. Don't go anywhere. Just be a few seconds after a few words from our sponsors. Thank you guys for hanging on. Welcome back to the Hangover. I'm Daniel. Alongside with me is Shannon. Before we get back into the conversation, the Pittsburgh Steelers beating the Atlanta Falcons and what we thought about the game, I want to remind you guys of our website, steelcurtainnetwork.com, your number one shop and stop for Pittsburgh Steelers news and coverage. Make sure you go check it out. Also, check out the link below for our DraftKings promo. I'm sure you heard it on the ads there. It's down in the description. So going back to the game, first series, Steelers, look a little bit shaky. They end up getting a long field goal. What were your thoughts after that first drive? Seeing Justin Fields kind of throw the ball, inaccurate, 3rd down run. What did you think after that first drive?
Well, I've watched Fields now for years, from his college days to at Chicago. And when some quarterbacks, they're pretty Joe Cool. You don't see a lot of nerves. With him, I don't know if you say nervous, but if he's excited, in a new environment like that, he'll throw hard, and he misses. He throws too hard and too high, and that's, once he calms down, you see it, and it's always good to get him a deep ball in there, get him somewhere he can really get on top of the ball and get the feel. It's kind of like a guy making a couple of free throws and then he finds his stroke in basketball. He's got to get him a couple of completions, and I think that, as you said, they cut the field in half. They made it real easy, one read stuff, roll. If it ain't there, run. And, so he was hitting some guys in the flats, I think he hit Freiermuth a couple times. He hit Harris, and I like how they eased him in there, because I think in the past it was like, here you are, go out there and win it. I think that's how Chicago did a lot of things back then. And so, I do feel like he calmed down. The fumbled snap. Mm-hmm. I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, Frazier, I think, had one of them in 4 years. And so I'm like, maybe it is Fields. And but thankfully they got that worked out just that one time. And because that could have been a disaster. But I loved how when he was decided to run, he was decisive. Mm-hmm. So I think they'd really talked to him about that. Don't put it up. Don't risk it unless it's open. If not, if there's any question, get what you can, because he's such a great athlete. Yeah. But I was like you. At first, I was a little bit nervous because of those first two, but then I reminded myself, well, this is how he starts. He did in college too, when he's a little overhyped, and I think he was.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And like I said, it just seemed like he needed to settle down. Once he did, I think he did get kind of in a rhythm. I think a lot of the referee stuff kind of, once he started going down deep, he had Pickens on a deep pass. Pickens gets called for pass interference on a ticky-tack play. And, I think that kind of, prevented that rhythm from going. But, he eventually found it. I thought he played well. But, yeah, that first snap and it being a fumble, the first thing that went into my mind was like, all right, I understand that this process, or the process that you've had in the past, you had a new guy playing center in Herbig in the preseason when it was happening with you, but this is something that is continually happening.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's a fluke, like even in the preseason where he had the situation where the center snapped the ball too early and it hit him in the hand, he
Mhm.
still ended
Yeah.
up getting it. That's another situation. It's just, you can call it bad luck, but these things keep happening where they need to stop.
Mhm.
And yeah, no, he almost bobbled it one other time when he pitched it back to Najee. And I think, in the second half, we saw less of Fields under center and more of him in the pistol and in shotgun. And I think that had a lot to do with it. I'm not sure how comfortable he is being under center. I don't think he played very much under center during college. And so it might be something that he's just not comfortable with. But going into the running backs, Najee Harris, he seemed to have a pretty good game. I think he had somewhere around 80 yards or so. Jalen Warren, I think they were kind of keeping him, under wraps still because of the injury. They were kind of protecting him.
Yeah. He
But
didn't look the same.
yeah, no, he didn't. He definitely didn't. Najee Harris actually went for 70 yards. Justin Fields had 14 carries for 57. Cordell Patterson had 4 for 13. Jalen only had 2 carries for 7. How do you think the running game was under Arthur Smith? This was something that had been, we were expecting a lot of yards. We're expecting this to be the backbone of the offense. Did it live up to your expectation?
Well, no, but it's not their line yet.
That's true.
It's I think when we get Samalu back, I mean, I think Spencer Anderson did an admirable job for his first start, but we're going to have Samalu in there. I think Daniels will bounce back, and I think whoever the tackles are, I believe that if it's Fuatanu, I think you're going to see much better blocking on outside zone, and you're going to have guys, him and Frazier can easily reach the second level. And so could Roderick Jones. He wipes guys out at the second level.
Mhm.
And so I kind of knew it probably wouldn't be as good as I was expecting for that game with all the backups and rookies. But there was so many times that Harris, he runs so hard. But you see why he didn't get his 5th-year option picked up. Because literally, they was 3 or 4 times, and he'd stand up and he'd do this. He'd get up in a defender's face and he'd be like, I was this close to breaking it. But it's always this close because he lacks that little extra burst, that whatever it is to help him hit that hole fast enough or be shifty in the hole to break that. Because he can break tackles, but he gets taken down by the ankles a lot. It just, I agree with him. There was 3 or 4 plays that could have went for much more, but he got took down. And so he was 20 carries, I think, for 70 yards.
Yeah.
I mean, it could have been a much better stat line. And some of that fell on him, in my opinion. But I think that if that can be more effective, whether it's Wilson or it's Fields, that will open up that play action. And it should open up the middle. Because we've seen different times that their middle linebackers were rushing, run blitzing, the line of scrimmage. And that's what if he could have got through that first wave of defenders, he had open green grass in front of him. So I expect there'll be a lot of improvement right there, but they definitely left some yardage on the field.
Yeah, 20 for 70 is only a 3.5 average, which is pretty much on, kind of on par where he's been most of his career, which has been why, like you mentioned, he didn't get the 5th-year option. Now, he had some he had some pretty good runs. I mean, he had one run that was 20 yards, so that's 19 for 50, and that's even lower of an average.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, I do think that once Sayumalu does get back out there, or maybe even Spencer Anderson gets more experience under his belt and becomes more fluid in the position in the guard position out there with the ones, that maybe the running game will start to pick up a little bit better. But I thought they did well. I honestly did. I thought the offensive line played well. I think that Justin took 2 sacks. I think one of them, or maybe even both of them, maybe he was holding on to the ball a little bit too long. But one other thing when it comes to the run is I thought they were doing a little bit of these cute plays that I didn't like. One of them was to George Pickens. He lost like 10 yards on it.
He was going backwards. I was like, oh gosh.
Yeah, it wasn't good. I mean, there was a couple plays there that I was like, I'm not sure about, but it's game one. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
have I did a Saturday show. So my State of the Steelers, little plugged in real quick on stillcurrentnetwork.com, the audio podcast only. And my title of the this past Saturday's podcast was that the Steelers were limping into week one. Quarterback was injured. You have offensive line injuries,
Mm-hmm.
and now you got the punter. And so, but who went down during the game where you had to improvise at a certain point. So injuries have definitely been a situation for the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least early on. But yeah, when it came to the running game, I thought it was okay. I don't think it lived up to my expectation of what I was hoping to see. I was hoping to see something like, over 150 yards. And I know they got
Yeah, yeah.
137. I would have been okay with like 140, 137 yards if that was just from the running back position. But that's also including Justin Fields, who ran for 57 yards. So
I would like to see him mix in some more quick hitting running plays.
yeah.
Because when you've got guys who are as quick and technically sound as Frazier and Daniels usually, and Fuatanu, these guys can seal, they can turn bodies and give you a running lane. We've seen that with the long touchdown in the preseason where Cordell Patterson scored against Detroit and ran right up Frazier's back because he turned and sealed his guy. The one where Edwards, he didn't make the squad or the practice squad, I don't think. But, he had that long run in one of the preseason games where Frazier did the same thing. He sealed a turn and he ran right up his back. He created that hole. That quick hitting, when you're a bunch of new guys working together and you try to do wide outside zone, anybody that misses a block, it could just throw everything off. And I do have to say this, and I think everybody's seen it. The wide receivers did not block good for the Steelers. We was counting on Jefferson. That CA3 is going to get pushed around. And he does. He gets thrown around like a rag doll. He tries, but he's just so little. But I thought that Jefferson would do a much better job of blocking, and he looked bad suddenly. So they're going to have to maybe revisit that. Azini, our new wide receiver coach, is going to have to kind of get on other guys, not just Pickens, and say, listen, you got to throw a quality block. You got to put some hustle behind that muscle, because they did not look good blocking, and that killed some of that outside zone runs.
There was a specific play there that went to Van Jefferson. I think it was on 3rd and short that led up to the 4th down and short that they didn't get.
Yeah.
And it was Calvin Austin blocking for Van Jefferson. I couldn't understand the logic behind that. I mean, I get it the other way. You got a bigger guy in Van Jefferson, a smaller, faster guy in Calvin Austin. Get him the ball and let the bigger guys block. But to put Calvin Austin in front of him, and he got pushed around, and I think there was another receiver that was out there that was smaller as well. I just thought that the personnel for those type of plays just weren't there, and which brings up the question. When you look at the receptions here, you have George Pickens, he had 6 receptions, but when it comes to the wide receivers, Calvin Austin had 1, Van Jefferson had 1, and that's it. The rest were tight ends and running backs. Do you think the Steelers maybe need that wide receiver 2 from somewhere else, or do you think a guy like Roman Wilson's going to come in and help out, given the fact that he really hasn't played much since the start of padded practice?
Well, I think the fact, normally I'd say yes, but I think the fact that he come from Michigan, a national championship team where he was a vital contributor, he's played at the highest level outside of the NFL, and he is an excellent blocker. He's a tough-nosed receiver. I think he will slide right in to wide receiver 2 sooner rather than later when he gets to play and practice regularly. The injury was terrible timing, but I do believe that, if a guy comes available, like just throwing a name out there, Cortland Sutton, if something like that was to happen, it's got to be a big body guy. It's got to be a guy that's going to be able to help block because the Steelers are going to do a lot of running. And, but even though Roman Wilson's not really big, he's like Hines Ward. He is very tough. He's strong and he's tenacious. kind of like I said about Beanie Bishop, I said, everybody just wait till the games matter and it's the regular season, and you're going to see how feisty he is and what a solid tackler he is. And he is going to do well, and everybody's going to love him. Same thing with Roman Wilson. You wait. Peyton Wilson looked incredible. I'm not jumping ahead. I'm just saying a lot of these rookies looked really good, and we see how much they're going to be able to contribute. We haven't had the benefit yet to see Roman Wilson, but it's coming.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm concerned. I'm not sure how much we're going to get out of Wilson getting on a moving train as a third round rookie. I understand the potential and things of that nature, but this is a different animal, the NFL, than it is in college. And
that's true. That's true.
We haven't seen it yet. And so even if he's doing it in practice now, I'm not necessarily how sure the practices are physical. So the first time that he gets out there in a stadium will probably be the first time since his injury that he's going to go up against somebody trying to knock his head off, so to speak, when it comes to the opposition going after him. To me, I think that the Steelers were open to pay Brandon Ayuk a lot of money for a reason. And I think we saw that reason this past weekend. George Pickens was the only guy that was, coming down with the ball or getting thrown the ball. I haven't seen the all 22 to tell you whether or not the other guys, if they were open, and maybe perhaps Justin Fields just wasn't seeing them. But at a certain time, teams are just going to key in on George Pickens and make, this offense throw it to somebody else. Now we got Pat Freiermuth. He just got paid big. He had 4 receptions for 27 yards, on 4 targets. I saw a lot of Cole Pruitt, to be honest with you, out there. I think I saw him more out there on the field than any of the other tight ends, Darnell Washington or Connor Hayward. So, where do you think first and foremost, do you think that the Steelers get another wide receiver at all, or you think they're just going to wait until Roman comes back?
Again, I think it's going to depend on who's available.
Yeah.
What's the cost? What they're going to have to give up to trade for him. Right now, there's already been a couple of guys go down at the position, and there's other teams that like to have another receiver.
Yeah.
I think the Steelers know what they got in Roman Wilson, and so that's why they're not feeling as desperate as maybe we are.
Yeah.
I do believe that Freiermuth will have opportunities to work deeper routes. If Pickens had that, you're talking about a ticky-tack offensive pass interference call. Yes, he did. It wasn't a full, but he did give a little push. But, he also was being ridden. I see guys get away with that all the time, and they threw the penalty on Pickens. Had it not, he'd had, 130-some yards?
Oh, yeah.
And the numbers would have looked even better, is all I'm saying. But I believe that Freiermuth is going to get the second most targets regardless, unless the Steelers get a top guy. And then I expect maybe your third most targeted guy to either be a Roman Wilson or a Harris or a Warren, because, Warren's going to catch a lot of balls when he's healthy.
Yes, sir.
But that's just how Arthur Smith's offense is. But the Khan's looking, Daniel. And if a guy's available that'll help this year's team, I think Khan will not hesitate to pull the trigger.
John Mechie, he was spoken about quite a bit. I think he was a healthy scratch. He was a healthy scratch this weekend.
That guy's awful talented. Yeah, he gave leukemia.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he did have
leukemia. And thank the Lord, it seems he's beat it. But they can do is awful talented to be a healthy scratch.
Yeah, exactly. What about the so you brought up the some of these tight ends, Pat Freiermuth. I think he's going to get some more opportunities as well. I think that just kind of going back to the quarterback position, if Russell Wilson is healthy come week 2, who do you expect to start?
Based on the fact that I feel like they really cut down the offensive game plan. Like I said, they rolled Fields to give him like one read, and if it wasn't their run, based on what we saw, I think they trust Wilson more, and especially with this backstory of Wilson going up against Sean Payton and his former team, I fully expect Wilson to play this week. if he's healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm fine if Fields plays if Wilson's not healthy, but I think because this is the same thing. This week you got Bo Nix going for the Broncos against our defense. You can't give them anything. You cannot turn the ball over, play sound football on offense, try to possess the ball, which the Steelers did good. They were almost 50% on third down conversions, which is for this offense is good. And if they can play another clean game, they should be able to beat Denver, even in Denver. And so, but yeah, I think if Wilson's healthy, Wilson's playing.
I agree with you. Even throughout the game and watching it, I didn't think that Justin Fields did enough to spread himself or give himself another opportunity just based on his play alone.
Yeah.
Maybe if half of those field goals turn into touchdowns, maybe we're talking a different story. Now, again, a lot of those issues, the Steelers were handicapped by going up against the Zebras. There was more than the TJ Watt. There was more than the pass interference call. How about the one where George Pickens, when he catches the ball and they call him down and nobody's around him?
Nobody was around him. Yeah. I kept saying, what the crap? Why couldn't they challenge it? Was the Steeler coaching staff and the people in the box, were they asleep? Well, every one of us saw it.
Yeah. It was easy to see. You see, and I was, I get maybe that one not so much because I guess technically the whistle should have been blown at that point, and so the play is dead. I don't remember hearing a whistle.
I didn't either. No.
And I think that should be challengeable if that ends up being the case. But even the TJ Watt one, the offsides, why can't that be challengeable? The play occurred. There was an outcome of the play. The penalty was something that is reviewable. It's not something that is judgmental. You can see whether or not the ball is moving and if he's over the line or not. I don't know. I mean, I guess, I get it. You don't want to slow down the game. But in those type of plays, I think that New York can make those decisions pretty quickly, especially on the TJ Watt play. What do you think?
When you see a guy, I've seen Aaron Donald get called for that. John Randall, a name from the past. Guys that were so explosive as that they look like they're, offsides because they're moving before anybody else is even reacting. But it's because they're just that much more athletic and quick twitchy than everybody else.
Yeah.
Derek Thomas used to get offsides all the time like that for Kansas City Chiefs. And he timed it perfectly. And if you watch, he's standing up, coming out of his three-point stand, but the ball is also being snapped. Now, it doesn't matter if his teammates have moved. It doesn't matter if the offensive linemen have moved. The center's moving because he's snapping. He was not offsides. And the ref admitted after the game to TJ that he blew that call. But, it was every call when they ripped the, Harris's helmet off, should have been a penalty. They caught Jones going over and taking up for Daniels, who was on the ground getting roughed up, and he went over and got it. And then the real penalty of that whole thing was eventually the defender who Jones pulled off smacked him upside the helmet right in front of the refs, or he wouldn't have got a penalty. Yeah. That's what they called on that dude, and because it was blatant right in front of everybody. But what I'm saying is it was like they had to beat the Falcons and the refs.
Yeah, no, they definitely did. There were so many situations like that. The Broderick Jones one I thought was just ridiculous. They showed the replay and they're like, what did he do? And then you see him get hit after the play, not just once, but twice. And you're right. It was the second one that they actually threw the flag on the Falcons player. And I'm like, wow, I get there in Atlanta. Maybe they thought that because they got a new quarterback and knew this and that. I don't know if maybe the refs were like, hey, maybe we need some more viewers here. I don't know. But it to me, it seemed blatantly in the side of the Atlanta Falcons. This was favored in one way. I didn't see any calls that were kind of like iffy that went in the Steelers' favor.
And it reminded me, I got to say, the Steeler fans, last year when San Francisco come into Pittsburgh in opening week, and they were louder and more numerous than the Steeler fans because the Steeler fans couldn't resist selling them tickets because they made so much. One guy, said, hey, I made my I paid for my next year's tickets just selling them.
Yeah.
But that was so disappointing to see the Niners were so enthusiastic about their team. They come and they just took over. Well, if you watch that game Sunday, you look at the stage, you thought it was a Steeler game.
Exactly.
And so that was like, get the crowd going in an away game, because that really shows that there's so much enthusiasm this year for what this team could be. And it fills defense. They knew what they were getting when they traded for him. And we've said all along, we want him to have time to sit back and have a couple series a game and develop. Now he got a whole game to get in there and get his feet wet. And now he's a Steeler. He feels like I'm a Steeler. But again, in a perfect world, Wilson will come back, will start, and he will just get a few series or two here and there. And, let him learn and under less stress in more ideal circumstances than what he's had earlier in his career.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, you're right about the fan base. It was loud. TJ Watt was enjoying it at the end of the game. He was getting everybody riled up. It was great to see, and speaking of TJ, man, what a game.
Oh,
if anybody has put their first name in the ballot for defensive player of the year come week 1, it's this man. And he was handicapped as well by the referees on the things that he was doing. Still ended up with sacks and fumble recoveries, regardless of the.
Do you see how many times he got chipped?
Oh yeah,
he couldn't rush that they wasn't chipping him, because Moore said, "I'm not letting him blow up this game," and he tried everything and he still blew it up. But I'll tell you this. Hell froze over on Sunday because, this morning, PFF said that TJ Watt, they give him the highest rating of any defensive player over the weekend.
They had no choice.
Now, that tells you right there that it froze over, because they never give him credit. I figure they give it to Myles Garrett because he stepped on the field, or he got close a few times. But they actually give it to TJ Watt. And I said, oh, my gosh. But really, TJ Watt was the one-man wrecking crew.
You know what? I did notice it didn't hit 90 degrees out here in Texas, so maybe you're right. Because it had been hot before then. Sticking on the defensive side, I thought that the defense played extremely well. I was so impressed with Dante Jackson. I mean, who's winning that trade between Dante Jackson and Deontay Johnson? Yeah. Again, another win for the Pittsburgh Steelers on the trade there. I thought the secondary played excellent. One player that I thought started to get more time as the game progressed and started to play better was a guy named Peyton Wilson. I think that guy's going to be a star. The tackle that I first noticed him on, he may have been on the field earlier, was one where it was close to the end zone. He saved a touchdown by tackling Bijan Robinson from behind after getting off of a block. Amazing.
Yes.
Amazing play.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably the most underrated play of the game, because most of the time a guy like Bijan Robinson with the players in front of him blocking in the open space he had, that's a touchdown. And Peyton Wilson got there. He got him from behind. I think he's going to end up being this team's second LB in no time. I thought it might take a few games, but I think he already had I think he had more snaps than Landon Roberts already.
Well, I'd said before he's starting. I said maybe even, within the first quarter of the season. Peyton Wilson's too talented. We got to remember he's 24. He's had a long college career, injury, season missed in there, and red shirt. He's mature. He's a freak athlete. He's incredibly fast. If you have him and Queen out there, but Peyton Wilson had 2 big tackles on the first 2 Atlanta series. He had 1 big tackle on both, and he was excellent in coverage. On the first interception, he took away the initial throw that Cousins wanted to take, and he come over to the second throw, and he tried to put it in there, and it got intercepted. So, I mean, Peyton Wilson is a complete linebacker, and I agree with you. I think he's starting soon.
Yeah, I mean, he's already getting more snaps than the other 2 inside linebacker, than Landon Roberts. Obviously, he's not getting more snaps than Patrick Queen, but any other linebacker inside, he's starting to get more snaps after 1 week. I mean, I think the writing's on the wall with that young man. I think he's going to be a special player. I think he's going to do a lot of good for the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. Another player that I thought played okay, was Cam Hayward. I thought he came back. I thought he had a bounce back game, after the injury filled season last year. I saw him get a couple pressures on the quarterback. He stopped the run whenever they were going to his side. Did you see what did you think about Cam Hayward and his performance?
Well, me and you haven't got to talk since he got his contract.
That's
I talked
true.
a little bit about it on Pump Your Brakes. It was a great situation for both parties. Cam Hayward wants to stay in Pittsburgh. He's a legacy player. Steelers want him there. That's who the Steelers are. But averaging out a 3-year contract, $15 million a year for what he brings on and off the field was a no-brainer. And this way, they have wiggle room on these last 2 years. If he says another injury-plagued season, hopefully he doesn't. Considering that was his first snaps, because he didn't have any in the preseason, I thought he looked good. I thought he was right in there on one of the sacks. I think Adams got the sack, but he was right there. If Adams wouldn't have got it, he was on it. And so he showed a little bit of burst that you didn't see in the second half of last year. And as you said, he is so good against the run. He really holds up. And this team now with this athletic, fast linebacking crew, when you have Queen and you have Wilson and you have the edge guys, you need Hayward to and Benton and Ogunjobi or Adams or whoever. They just got to tie up their blockers, man, and fill them running lanes. And I thought Hayward did a good job.
I did too. This defense.
I want to ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I've heard some people, kind of down on Patrick Queen. I mean, yeah, he didn't have the big plays, but he did his job, and other people made big plays. Sometimes you're the guy that's, getting the flashy plays, and other times you just got to do your job, keep containment, fill your lane, and other people make the plays. To me, it wasn't that he missed any plays. It was that other guys made plays. But I thought he played a solid game.
I did too. I think there was a couple of plays early on. One that he kind of took the wrong angle on I think it was Bijan, and he kind of missed the ability to tackle. It kind of fell off the back end of him. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, I thought as the game progressed, he got his feet under him, kind of similar to everybody. I think early on that first series or so, a couple of series there that the Steelers defense was out there, I think they were kind of getting settled down. But when you look at what the Atlanta Falcons were able to do, which wasn't much, but they held Kirk Cousins to 155 yards throwing, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, which that touchdown came after that sack fumble by TJ Watt that was
taken away.
Taken away. And so should they have even scored that? Probably not. But they ended up with it. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He had a QBR of 29.2. The Atlanta Falcons as a team only rushed for 89 yards. Now, this is what their bread and butter is.
Yeah.
So you have an offensive line or defensive line that's elite. You have Cam Hayward, Keanu Benton out there. The pass rushers are amazing. I think the inside linebacker core is going to be elite with Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson. And we just saw what the secondary is going to do. Is there a weakness on this defense?
I would still like to see, and I've said before, we didn't get to see much of the new defensive tackle, and I cannot think of his name.
Lowry?
Yes, Lowry, ain't it?
Lowry, there you go.
Yeah. I didn't see him out there much. I think he's 94 is his number. But Adams played well. Yeah. I really did. He was very he penetrated and did well because he's not a hold the point kind of guy. But I'd like to see. I don't know. They need one more run stuffer. Now they've got a Landon Roberts, and we know that But I'm talking about. I don't like Benton at nose tackle. I've said this before. I'd like to have just a big. If you look at the Ravens, you look at all these teams that are hard to run on. They got 2 monstrous tackles, or at least a big nose tackle. And the Steelers, Benton doesn't qualify, in my opinion. Benton is more athletic. He's more like a young Hayward. So, there might be a guy that becomes available, and they might try to bring him in. But other than that, the defense looks pretty set to me. I might be I have silver glasses, goggles on, but I'm just so happy. I'm happy about the secondary. I'm happy about the athleticism and the speed, and I just see so much they can do with this defense.
Yeah, no, yeah, the talent on this defense is immense. I mean, the speed at every level as well is amazing. I mean, Benton is a guy like you mentioned that has a lot of speed and agility, more
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe like a Cam Hayward in his younger days, as you mentioned, or Stephon Tuitt. I think he's more of that guy versus the inside guy, like you were
Mhm.
mentioning. These the linebackers are fast. I mean,
Oh
they're
yeah.
quick.
Oh yeah.
They're going to be able to cover. They're going to be able to take on those tight ends as well that some of these other teams are going to be utilizing. I'm excited about this team. This is a championship defense. If the offense can do what they're supposed to do, which, hey, they actually control the ball more than the Atlanta Falcons, and
Yeah.
they, I think they were 50% on third downs, which is pretty
Almost. It was
awesome.
40 something. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, pretty close to it, which
Yeah.
is really, really good for this offense, especially what they had.
Was
And
it 8 out of 17? I think something like that.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
and the thing is too, we have to realize like this wasn't with the starting quarterback, and there's some holes there on the offensive line. This team and offensively is only going to get better. You know what I mean? We have a $2 super chat coming in from Dennis. Thank you so much, Dennis. Pullback. Kirk Cousins is still hurt. It was obvious to me. He was playing in the out of the pistol quite a bit. A lot of people were making a lot of commentary on the fact that maybe perhaps he's still dealing with the Achilles. What do you think? I saw him run a little bit. In fact, that through that touchdown he had was on the move. Do you think he was affected by it?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you, definitely, Dennis. Um, I wanted to mention that play happened because one of the pass rush was that they missed him.
Mm-hmm.
They hit his arm, but he got away. And then Beanie Bishop is a rookie. And you got to be within 5 yards of the guy, the deepest guy. If Pitts got behind him and he settled at around the 6, and if he would have faded back like he should have to about the 3, he would have been able to make a play on that ball. But he settled too close or
Mm-hmm.
too far away. Here's where you want to say it. So, but as you say, Cousins had to move a little bit right there, and he made a good play. I don't think he's still hurt. I do think that he's feeling the effects of that Achilles. Now, I've had knee injuries, but I've not had an Achilles. So I think you have.
I have.
Yes. So you will know more than me, but I think that there is, it takes a while to get that where you're not favoring it. Maybe is that the word? That
Right.
you're not aware of it. You're still kind of leery because that's one of them injuries when it happens, it just happens out of nowhere, and it's always in the back of your mind that that could happen again. And I think he played a little gingerly.
Mm-hmm.
If you notice, to me, he was, kind of easing around. So I don't know if he's still hurt or but he is definitely feeling the effects of that injury in the rehab.
Well, fortunately for me, I had world-class training and a world-class physique. When I went through my
Well,
Achilles tendon rupture, it's pretty
yes,
much the
yes.
same.
You're
For
like
me,
Aaron Rodgers. You're more like
yeah,
Aaron Rodgers.
yeah, I was ready to go the same season.
Yeah, yeah.
For me, it's something that I'm still leery about. Still, obviously I'm not, a pro athlete or anything like that, but I'm still very conscious of what I do with my right leg.
Uh-huh.
I injured myself January of 2021, I believe it was. And it wasn't until the first time I actually jumped was the following year. It was the Steelers playoff game. And this is when TJ Watt took back the fumble recovery from Mahomes back, and the
Uh-huh.
Steelers were
Yeah.
up 7-0 in the playoff game. That was the first time I jumped. I jumped off my couch. And
Yeah.
I ain't gonna lie, when I landed, I was like, holy crap, did I hurt myself?
Yeah.
And so, not everybody's the same. Obviously, we've had some guys that are mentally strong that have come back from an injury like this much quicker than others. But when it comes to Kirk Cousins, he didn't get any preseason time either.
Yeah.
And so I think he was coming in rusty, and I think he was coming in maybe a little bit concerned because he hadn't taken a hit the entire offseason. So, I can see that being an issue now, but the Steelers didn't blitz him. You know, that was one of the things that Tomlin had mentioned in his press conference, that they were aware of his ability on the blitz, that they had to get to him with their core guys, and they were
And
able
they
to do
did.
so. And they got to him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he would have been 100% healthy, if he could have had a better performance, still given the pressure and the amount of hits he was taking.
Yeah. The coverage, they blanketed their receivers.
Mhm.
And Joey Porter Jr., they asked him after the game, well, you know, how do you think that London played? You know, or what kind of game did Drake London? And he said, well, what was his stats? Because he knew he was on him, and I think he had like 3 catches for 12 yards or something. I mean, he just shut him down. And but it was like there was a couple plays they had every receiver doubled. Because when you have athletic linebackers, you can do that. And you have quality safeties, you can do that. And the Steelers finally do. So
yeah, no, they definitely do. And I mean, this is going to be a big time defense, y'all. I don't care who's back there. They're going to have some problems with this defense. And it's going to be good for us to watch. It's just the game one. There's 16 more to go.
Yep.
And this one was the one that counts the least. And so they're 1-0. They're undefeated on the season.
They're number 1 in the division.
Number 1 in the division. The only team in the AFC North to have won this past weekend or this first week. Good things. Good things. Do you have anything you want to share with everybody or plug in? I know you have the homies a little bit later on this week.
Yeah, just check us out there on Puppy Breaks, 8 o'clock on Wednesday. And, you know, that me and Big G, we have a tendency to get a little excited, you know, and then, of course, we always have Steady Take there, our brother. He keeps us in line, and he pumps the brake and shows that picture of us getting ready to crash in the car. So, but yeah, definitely tune in, and because there's so much going on right now, and there's so much to talk about, and I'm glad we've started this season out on a positive note.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We needed it after a winless preseason and a lot of doubt.
But it just doesn't matter. Remember, it just doesn't matter. This matters.
This one matters, and this one's in the win column. Enjoy it. We got a whole week. You know, we got another favorable matchup coming up this weekend. If you guys want to hear my preview of that, make sure you check out State of the Steelers on the audio side only, which will be airing out at 4 a.m. on Saturday. So make sure when you wake up on Saturday mornings, you tune in wherever you get your audio podcast, and you'll hear my preview and thoughts on the game. You don't want to miss it. I want to thank everybody. Please hit that like and subscribe and ring that notification bell. Shannon, take us out, my man.